What I'm going to talk today, well, first of all, as I said, as the presenter said, I'm Principal Offensive Security Engineer at Bentley Systems within the product security team, so I'm not selling anything to you guys. After this presentation, today I'm going to talk about human interface, or the acronym HID, Human Interface Offensive Devices. After this presentation, you will be even more paranoid and suspicious about USB gadgets. I'm saying gadgets because another thing you will learn today, if you were not aware, of course, is that you need to understand the difference between USB flash drives, so where they have a file system in it, and USB gadgets at all, so that in general, so that they use the USB protocol. And of course, you will learn new tools to conduct red team engagements and scare CISOs, which usually are the ones that provide you budgets for security. One thing first is that USB devices are still one of the main source of malware in the ICS world. Of course, there is a precondition, the fact that I'm assuming that industrial control system are not supposed to be exposed on Inter. That is, of course, one thing that sometimes is going on the side. Here there are some example of real case scenarios related to USB drives within industrial control system incidents. My favorite one, well, there is the almost 1 decade old Stuxnet that we know that was used. USB flash drives were used as initial vector to get into the plant. But another operation is the Operation Copperfield. The Operation Copperfield is amazing because everything started because of an employee that downloaded a movie and then plugged it in a workstation during his shift, and from there starting the real infection. So it's a fact that USB devices are a pain in the ass. How the industry try to overcome this issue? Well, by applying data loss prevention tools or whitelisting VIDs, PIDs. VID and PID means version ID and product ID. So each USB hardware has a unique couple of these IDs that identify the vendor and the product, the model. So in this case, what I wanted to show you is that USB devices are not only flash drive. This is a main misconception. I had a discussion in the SANS ICS community forum a few weeks ago about people asking how to mitigate, how to prevent USB flash drive being mounted. Well, that's one problem that must be fixed, but there are not only flash drives. As you can see here, there are plenty of other devices that can be used through a USB port. So let's step a bit back. What means HID? So human interface device. According to well-known Wikipedia, is a type of computer device usually used by humans that take input and gives output to humans. Quite dumb definition, but gives you an idea. Everyone knows what are HID, human interface devices. Mice, keyboards, tablet, and so on. Most of the times, as you know, they don't need drivers. So a potential attacker doesn't even need to install anything from on the disk, so less artifacts from blue team perspective. Usually are ignored by data loss prevention tools because they are focusing mainly on flash drive. Everyone knows that Stuxnet was brought in through USB flash drive, so we want to block file system being mounted from USB ports. So in this case, this is an example of a EDR, endpoint detection response solution, which allows the user or the sysadmin of an enterprise infrastructure to whitelist or blacklist certain type of devices. As you can see here, we have disk storage, so USB flash drive, USB printer, Bluetooth device, many of them. But one thing is lacking is human HID, human interface devices, so keyboards or mice. Of course, there are data loss prevention tools, well, appliances, that do they allow sysadmins to whitelist and blacklist keyboards. We'll see later that is possible to spoof VID and PID, so we can bypass that restriction. Of course, another thing is that usually keyboards and mice are not under antivirus scope, so which is very good for attacker point of view. So what could possibly go wrong? Okay, most of you probably knows the first generation and the second generation. The first generation can be dated of HID offensive devices can be dated around 2009, 2010. And is composed of, well, the well-known rubber ducky, which is a commercial solution, and the less known Teensy, which used two different frameworks, software framework, but was acting exactly like a rubber ducky. Then in 2014, was released as a result of a research, Bad USB, from Kaspersky in Germany, and practically what he was doing was he took an existing commercial device like USB flash drive, USB hub, rewrote the firmware in it, patched it to act like a rubber ducky. So that was a step further. The game changer came in 2015. The project made by NSA playset guys was called Turnip School. Practically is a clone one-to-one of an existing tool made by NSA Tau unit from United States, which was called Cottonmouth. We'll see later how it looks like. So practically, why is a game changer? It's the first known available device available to public that can jump air-gapped environments. We'll discuss later about air-gapped environments because the theory and the practice of air-gapped environments slightly differ. So anyway, the third generation can be dated on 2017, still ongoing. There are two new devices. One is the one I was working on with Injector. You can see it from attacker point of view as a sort of rubber ducky on steroids. Simply, well, has all the feature of a rubber ducky, plus the ability to be controlled remotely through a Wi-Fi connection. So it can act either as access point, even with hidden SSID, or it can be used as a client. So you instruct the with injector to connect to an existing Wi-Fi network. Imagine, here I'm not talking about air-gapped environment, I'm talking more in a generic corporate environment, like bank, any office. You can instruct it to connect to an existing Wi-Fi network. So imagine the attacker from outside the building or the guest network of the corporate environment itself. And one thing, well, it's relatively cheap. It's like 1/5 of rubber ducky. I had a few discussions with the guys, so I promised them I would create my own and would be cheaper, so that's it. And then the other cool device created by Marcus Mang last year is a sort of Bash Bunny on steroids. If you don't know what is Bash Bunny, is another device created by Hack5, the same guys that created rubber ducky. Though PwnPy is based on a Raspberry Pi Zero wireless, so it's just €15 device. The framework is open source as well as with Injector, so you can it costs zero from an attacker point of view. It has Wi-Fi capability as with Injector, plus it can emulate a Ethernet NIC network interface through USB port. So it can even, it is extending the capabilities of with Injector. The sad part of PwnPy is that is based on a Raspberry Pi, which is like 2 times bigger than with Injector. To give you an idea, with Injector can be hid into a classic USB key. Or recently, a colleague of mine showed me this. So you can even hide inside a fake lighter case. So it's pretty good for covert operations. What is now the main factor that brings HID offensive devices to the next level? Before, when people was using rubber ducky, since it was unable to remotely control it, was either using as a dead drop, USB dead drop, so dropping, parking lot, toilet, wherever, reception, and hoping someone will pick it up and plug it in. But unfortunately, or luckily, depending from point of view, nowadays many security awareness trainings with the companies know that it's really bad to pick up a USB key and plug it in your computer or HMI, whatever, call it. So the next step is now we can remotely control that device with injector or POMPI. What can we do? Well, we can weaponize USB gadgets. As you can see here, there are plenty of USB gadgets, even the most strangest one. So the idea is that, imagine that you are a red teamer. Here I see multiple scenarios. The first one is like you have access to the premises of the company. You walk around doing your recon, information gathering phase, so without attacking anything. You see that the company is using HP keyboards. And probably, if the company is a bank, maybe they are using a DLP solution that whitelists only that specific HP keyboard model. So what you do, you come back to your office, Amazon, eBay, whatever, you can even steal one if you really want, take the same model, pop it open, and place a USB hub in it, and with injector, connected to the, well in this case it's a mouse, connected to the mouse, close back the case, go back to the premise, into the premises of the target building, and quickly replace one of those. The mouse, since there is a USB hub, will normally operate as a usual mouse, so from external point of view, no one will notice that has been weaponized, but in the meanwhile, with injector, we'll create a hidden SSID, so Wi-Fi network, and the attacker from outside the building can connect back and then inject payload, any payload. We see later, we can do even more. The second thing that we can do with weaponized gadgets is that, imagine that you don't have access to the premises. So you cannot, there is a high physical security procedures in place. So imagine like, nuclear plant. So you cannot, the attacker, red teamer cannot get into it. Though, we can pack like some fancy USB gadgets, not a mouse, something like a plasma ball. Or in a real case scenario, I was using a sort of can fridge USB enable. This one was used to own a colleague of mine. So practically what you do, you weaponize a USB gadget. Better if, for example, you weaponize one gadget that is not supposed to have data in it, like, exchange data, because a mouse, that can exchange data. But in case of a plasma ball, we just take, technically supposed to take only the 5 volt from the USB port. So even in that case, the security awareness of the victim will be lower than finding a USB key, right? So what you do, you pack it, then you add some fake brochure, you buy a fake domain, social engineering stuff. You pack it, send through FedEx to the target company, addressing the victim, and then eventually the victim will take it, saying, of course, I'm going to target someone that I already did recon and information gathering, for example. In this case, I knew that the target was a home beer brewer guy. So as soon as he saw that, plugged in, and me from the floor behind, under it, I was able to see the Wi-Fi network. So that then was very easy to hack him. So, and then the third option is that you are Kim Jong-un and you want to have fun hacking international delegates. This is a real case scenario where all the delegates at the Trump Kim Jong in Singapore received a package, and the welcome package contained a USB fan. So many people wanted to get access to one of those kind of fans because they wanted to see, break it, pop it open and see if it was a weaponized gadget or not. Sadly, no one managed to get into. Though I ordered a bunch of them, and now I'm re-engineering with injector in a smaller version just to see if I can weaponize it. So, yeah, that's possible. Software frameworks. So far I talked about with injector. From the hardware point of view. From the software point of view, well, which are the main features? Well, the usual one from Rubber Ducky, of course, remote control. Changeable VID and PID because we want to spoof existing models, so bypass DLP solutions. Support multiple OSs, Windows, Linux, OS X, embedded ones if you want. I mean, at the end is emulating keyboard, serial connection, and mouse, so you can do whatever you want. And also, as also a rogue access point phishing feature. So you know Wi-Fi Pineapple, another device created by Hack5. So in this case, we can reprogram with injector to act as a rogue access point just because we have the hardware capable of it. So I decided to add it to the code base. And again, my favorite feature of with injector is the air gap bypass through serial. So here is an example. Okay, this is how to spoof VID and PID. It's very easy. Of course, the hardware is based on a Atmega 32U4, which is Arduino-based controller. So you just need to copy-paste this from the GitHub repo into the Arduino IDE. And then, of course, you need to change VID and PID according to the target model you want to spoof. And then it's as simple as pressing upload and boom. That the with injector will just clone all the features, VID and PID, product name and manufacturer name of the target keyboard. Okay, going back to air gap. What is, from the theory, an air gap machine? Technically, from the theory, an air gap machine should be a completely isolated machine from any kind of network, so internet, of course, any kind of LAN, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, no Zigbee, nothing. Just power and that's it. Of course, connection PLC eventually. Why the theory and not the practice? Well, the practice showed you, I guess, many times that it's doable, but not practical, not reliable, and not many sysadmins wants to handle that, especially if they need to move remotely, for administer it. So, though said that, in the rare cases there exists such kind of air gap machine, that machine must contain really sensible data, because otherwise no one would spend so much effort to air gap it. Okay, here is an example of how with injector works. So on the right side, you see a virtual machine. For proof of concept point of view, I just shrinked everything in a video. So that virtual machine has no connection whatsoever. No internet, no Ethernet, no Bluetooth, no LAN, no Wi-Fi, nothing. And on the other side, you see the host machine. So my Windows, where the attacker is emulating the attacker will connect to the Wi-Fi network, which is, in this case I didn't put as hidden just to show you the name of the Wi-Fi network. So as soon as the attacker, as soon as with injector gets plugged in into the virtual machine, so in this case is again proof of concept, so we are plugging it in ourselves. Imagine, as I said, the scenarios before, shipping the plasma ball or replacing a keyboard or a mouse. So in some way, we assume that with injector gets plugged in. Okay, now from device manager, you will see appearing keyboard, which is with injector. In a few seconds, should appear a new Wi-Fi network from the host point of view. Now the attacker is connected, goes into the menu, looks at the payload. In this case, we will, as I said, that virtual machine is air gapped, right? So no connection whatsoever with the outer world or LAN. So in this case, the attacker will remotely execute a PowerShell script which will look up for the serial port that has been created meanwhile with injector was plugged in into the virtual machine, the air-gapped machine, and then execute the command who am I, take the output, push it back through the serial connection, and then store it in the memory of with injector. Then the attacker from outside the building, for example, now is the host computer, will be able to see the output. As you can see here, successfully got exfiltrated the output of the command we executed remotely. So, and the virtual machine can be seen as completely air-gapped, because as you can see there, everything is disabled. So no magic, just And of course, since it's a very simple PowerShell script, Window Defender didn't flag anything. Of course, if there would be app locker, AMSI, and other thing, we will need to create a more complicated script, but the idea is the same. Of course, we can do air gap also for Linux. This is another very simple script that can be pasted, injected through with injector. What it's doing is simple. It's looking up for the serial connection, executing if config in this case, and then sending back the output through the serial. Then would be stored again, once again, into the with injector flash memory. Here, as I said at the beginning, I mentioned cat and mouse. So that software framework I showed you is not the only one available for with injector. When I designed the hardware, I wanted a hardware multi-purpose that people can develop their own softwares. And here is another software framework made by Rogan Daves from SensePost. Practically is targeting Windows systems. So once it's flashed into with injector, we create a Wi-Fi access point. We start a stealthily screensaver killer. So imagine the target, the victim is a sysadmin guys that love coffee, and he has this lovely habit to not lock the laptop, but just set up like 60 seconds delay, and as soon as he's walking away, the laptop will lock itself. So with the screensaver killer, US abuse and with ejector, we slightly move 1 pixel every few seconds the mouse in a way that the screensaver will never kick in. So imagine the guy goes to take his coffee, he thinks that the laptop is locked, and then in the meanwhile the attacker is from outside the window and execute the payloads. The payloads, what it is again a PowerShell script which creates a HID row device, which can be seen as, I would not be very technical. It's just like the serial connection of with injector with the other software framework. The only thing is that it has higher rate, so baud rate, so we can communicate, we can create a full exfiltration channel. So instead of having one command and output exfiltrated per time, we have a full CMD shell. For time constraints, I cannot show you the full demo. If you want to make a photo of these slides, there is the video demo using US Abuse, which is a really cool device, software framework. And it's based, as I said at the beginning, on Cottonmouth. This is the original document leaked by Edward Snowden that is enjoying Russia right now. And practically, NSA Tau made it approximately around 2008. And Rogan made on 8 years later, 2016. So still a good, nice toy. What's next? Well, the next hardware I'm working on, I wanted something more, something with better capabilities in terms of remote control. I wanted something that I can use to scare CISOs even more. So here it is with Elite. Right now is starting the QA. And how is based? Well, is still using the Atmega 32U4 to emulate a HID, a keyboard and a mouse. It has a USB hub controller. So in this case, did you see the photo before that I was weaponizing a USB mouse by using an external hub? In this case, I embedded the controller in here, so the attacker just need to solder a couple of wires and that's it. I replaced the ESP, so the Wi-Fi chipset, with a mobile baseband. So the first version will have GSM, but since many of you are living like in places like US, Canada, where GSM is not anymore a thing, I will replace it with a IoT, LTE IoT baseband. So soon will happen that as well. Since we have a GSM 2G baseband, now the range, operational range, is pretty much unlimited, right? So here is the workflow. So the attacker sends an SMS to the device that is on the other side of the world and says, do air gap, who am I? With Elite, which is obviously, we always assume that in one way or in another got plugged in into a target machine. It executes the PowerShell payload, returns from the serial connection the output of the payload of the command, and then it sends an SMS back to the attacker. So here is just the video that shows how it works. Okay, once one gets connected to the laptop with the lead, which is inside the keyboard, that is working perfectly because there is a USB hub that is handling both data, we connect to the mobile network. Then the attacker remotely from the other side of the board, let's say, sends a command like do air gap who am I, and then with the lead we'll inject the payload, the same payload approximately of with injector. So again, who am I, takes the output, send it back through the serial. This time though, instead of Wi-Fi, we will get immediately, instantly, even from the other side of the board, the output of the command executed and exfiltrated. I already know that SMS control has limited charge. That's why I'm already working on HTTPS based with a sort of hybrid command and control between SMS and a server. So that's known. So I'm working on that. Sorry, but I couldn't add to all these slides due to time constraints. Next is microphone. Well, we have a basement, mobile basement, right? So why not adding acoustic surveillance? Many CISOs tend to underestimate things like mouse jacking, we will see later, or I don't know, heat injection somehow. But when you talk with them and you show them that you can record a security manager from meeting room in real time just by sending this command SMS to with delete, and with delete calls you back, or even you can put the number of the CISO phone. So with delete will call back the CISO himself. So then he understands that is more critical problem than just USB keyboard. NRF. How many of you knows what is mouse jacking attacks and NRF chipset? Cool. Okay, mouse jacking. Mouse jacking is a research based on, it's an attack based on a research related to vulnerable wireless keyboards and mice. What you can do with that? Well, you can walk around the building from outside even, hunt for wireless keyboard and mice, and then remotely, not only just sniff keystrokes, which is already cool, but we can inject keystrokes very fast into the victim machine. I was hunting, like 2 years ago, I was hunting for all the corporate building I'm working for unauthorized devices. And I found them and we eliminated them. Though, after a while, I checked again and we found another device that was not in our inventory and was like, where it's coming from. So practically a developer brought his own, not keyboard, but mouse. And when I told him, look, he's vulnerable, but come on, it's a mouse. It's not injecting anything, it's like a pointer. The fact is that since the firmware is the same, the basement is the same, even if you have like a mouse, you can still inject keystrokes like a keyboard. So it was like, ah. So the idea is that I added an NRF chipset to allow this kind of attacks. And why? Well, the idea is, usual assumption, with delete gets connected to a target machine, okay? Why just attacking that one when we can hunt for other, for vulnerable wireless mice and keyboards around? And then, this is a short proof of concept. Of course, in this case, I used the same laptop where with delete was connected, was using also the vulnerable keyboards for matter of recording proof of concept. In a real case scenario, I would like, most likely I would hunt other targets, other laptops or desktops or whatever, where they're using these kind of vulnerable devices. So here I do mouse jack. In this case, the 2000 is the number of channel ops that I'm doing looking for packets. Because the idea is that you scan the air, look for packets. If a packet is valid, you start to follow the hopping sequence and then inject your code. So here in this case, I will move the touchpad to generate some packets. As you can see, it's moving. there is the debug. Sorry for redacting, but there was some sensible information. Anyway, packets are detected. With the lead starts to follow the hopping and then inject my payload. In this case, it's just Open Explorer and Nyan Cat. So, but still, the idea, we can remotely attack users that are not physically connected with the lead. So it's like a step further than with injector. Another thing I started to work is embedding into with the lead also a 315 433 megahertz transmitter, which will allow us to work on the radio level point of view, like disabling sensor, alarm sensors, jamming, brute forcing. Here is a very dumb example of how it worked. So practically I previously diffed packets of a remote controller, and then, well, in this case, it's hard-coded into with the lead. But just to show you that you can easily replicate signals with so here I'm activating the activating, and here it's saying that the alarm system got disabled. So you can really replicate the signal, radio signals from a radio remote control. And here is the more valuable proof. Here is the signal that was analyzed from the remote controller, and here is the signal that I replicated with the lead. As you can see, are matching, 100% matching. So it's another thing that we can do we will do with the lead. So fuzzing, brute forcing, disable sensors. Why? Well, not sure. I decided to add this feature as well, just because. Okay, just to conclude, mitigations. Don't trust unknown USB devices, any. Not just flash drives, even mouses, well, no. At most, use a USB condom, or start looking around for, there are some commercial solutions which I cannot disclose because it would be like advertisement, but there are open source solutions that can prevent that. So here is a Linux. If you want, you can take a screenshot of these two open source solutions. And here is for Windows. I really like the first one, Duck Hunt, which has paranoid, normal, sneaky, log-only operational modes, and allows us to block completely these kind of attacks.